The Amiga enjoyed several technical advantages over its console counterparts in the late 80s and early 90s. This was mostly due to the powerful custom graphics hardware contained within the computer. Many developers found success working with the Amiga's graphical superiority, and at the front of the pack was cinemaware.
Their name alone gave players an idea of what to expect from their games. Big sprites, bold colours, and a generally impeccable style of presentation. There was simply no equivalent to Cinemaware's Amiga titles on competing consoles, giving the computer a unique appeal. Their most famous game, and one which is often brought up in the same breath as the Amiga itself, was Defender of the Crown. Defender of the Crown was an ambitious game. It was a strategy game first and foremost, with a focus on empire building and war games. There were also various mini-games that would give player control in a more direct way. Players would often be asked to participate in jousting tournaments, or sword fight their way through an enemy castle. In many ways, the flow of the game is not unlike other popular strategy games like XCOM, as it incorporates a macro game when taking over the kingdom, and a micro game when participating more directly. The strategy itself was not very complicated, but it was satisfying to play and accessible enough for a wide variety of players to enjoy. The game can be quite difficult, particularly if you get some bad luck early in the game. However, with a little practice, and some occasional help from Robin of Locksley, players could reach the end of the game without too much trouble. There isn't a lot of replay value once you have beaten the game, but that's not uncommon for games from this era. The biggest difference was the presentation. Strategy games were not heralded for their presentation. In fact, it was the opposite. They were often sparse and utilitarian, limiting their appeal to those who were staunch fans of the genre and prepared to invest hours just to learn the mechanics of the game. Defender of the Crown subverted these expectations and blew players away with a colourful game featuring great animation and realistic perspectives. A great example of this is the Jousting Tournaments. Most games of this era would have simply shown a static picture and explained the events through text. Defender of the Crown gave players the opportunity to joust from a first-person view, then attack the opponent from a side-on viewpoint, not unlike that used for future games like Street Fighter. It was a far more dynamic game than other strategy titles available, and was a fantastic showcase for the power of the Amiga.
Defender of the Crown was widely regarded as a classic, which led the developer to port it to a variety of different formats over the years. These ports varied wildly in terms of quality, since the Amiga was so technically superior to all the other consoles. Take the NES version, for example.
The colours are muted, the animation is significantly worse, and the game simply doesn't have the visual polish that made the Amiga version so appealing. The base gameplay is the same, but this port shows how much of the appeal of the original version was from the graphics. As the years passed, the ports continued and got significantly better. Take the port to the Game Boy Advance, that actually improved on the original version in a lot of ways. There were several features cut from the original game due to time constraints that eventually found their way into a sequel, but it was not as revolutionary as the first game, and didn't find the same audience.
Look, we love to trumpet the idea that graphics aren't as important as gameplay, but everyone knows presentation is one of the most important parts of any game. There's no better evidence of that than Defender of the Crown. The game remains fun to play, but it's those little details that stick.
The twinkling star in the sky above the castle as it's being raided. The crackling fire that illuminates Robin as you ask him for more men for the cause. The gleaming trumpets being played to signal the start of a local tournament. These details are key elements of the narrative that we build for ourselves as we play games like this, and should never be overlooked.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Game Room. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. And now I'm going to leave you with the Game Room quote of the week.